Welcome back to the Crucial Convo podcast. You are tuned into your gracious host, Kojo Afriye. What is going on, y'all? You could be anywhere in the world, but if you're on this channel, thank you for tuning in. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done that. And of course, hit the likes for the algorithms. What is good? We're talking about a ton of things tonight. Before I get into the subject, I really want to talk about the Black community. I want to talk about FBA. I want to talk about first generation immigrants and the divide that seems to be happening within Black people. But before I get into that particular conversation, I want to kind of dive into a couple of other things real quick. So I'm seeing that businesses, I always think it's really important to, take a look at businesses and where things are going. It's an interesting time because, businesses that have been around for a long time are faltering because of AI. They're faltering because marketing. They're faltering because consumers are changing how they do things. And, I'm one of them guys where it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But let's talk about Cracker Barrel. This is one I saw. Now, here's the thing. I grew up in Illinois. Cracker Barrel is in Illinois. I only seen one in the area I grew up in. So I wasn't a Cracker Barrel guy. I was an IHOP guy and Denny. Well, Denny's too, but mainly IHOP for me. So I wasn't really a Cracker Barrel guy. I wasn't very blown away by their stuff. My wife, she's from St. Louis, and that's what she grew up on a Cracker Barrel. But anyway, Cracker Barrel has decided to change their logo. I'm going to get into that real quick. So let's get into that.
Home style cooking brings family together.
Cracker Barrel is known for its comfort, from its food to its country charm. Many finding it a throwback to a simpler time. But this morning, the company making another effort to look forward, unveiling a new logo that's causing a stir for loyal fans of the beloved Southern chain. Overhauling the iconic logo. Missing Uncle Herschel, the man in overalls who's been a fixture since the 1970s. And, well, the barrel. In its place, a simpler, more modern design the company says calls back to its 1969 roots. The rebrand is part of a $700 million transformation meant to bring in younger diners. But the change isn't sitting well with some diners.
This is terrible.
What happened to Grandpa?
Or the markets. Shares of Cracker Barrel plunged 12% Thursday, shedding $94 million in market value, one of the company's worst single-day declines in years.
Hold up. This is crazy. First of all, before we get back to that, $94 million. That's a lot of money to lose in such a short amount of time. And I'm going to get back into it. But with Cracker Barrel, here's the thing. I get people want to do rebrands. Like I think they need to get rid of that CEO and get the guy who revamped PF Chang's and he's currently revamping Red Lobster. I forgot my Nigerian brother's name. Please forgive me. I forgot his name. I don't know it right now, but young guy, he's probably like 37, 38 years old, under 40, but he revamped PF Chang's a couple of years ago and is currently revamping Red Lobster. Now, here's the thing with Cracker Barrel is, like I said, I've never been super impressed with Cracker Barrel. It's cool and all, but it's not better than IHOP. But I think when you're gonna revamp the store, because they're trying to make it more light and they're trying to make the the logo. They got rid of the old man on the logo. That's like getting rid of Colonel Sanders for KFC. Pardon me. People love the icons when it comes to certain brands. So as small as it may be, you can't just change that. Now, here's the thing. I think when you go to lighten up the stores and you want to attract a younger audience to the stores, I'm going to let this keep playing, but hopefully you change the food, because that's where you're going to get younger people. So it's not just the logo itself will turn off people, because at the end of the day, like, again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if people like it for a certain thing, you got to kind of stay on that type of path. If you want to get new, like for me, if you want me to go to Cracker Barrel every week, that food got to be better. Let me just tell you right now, but let me let this keep playing.
Redesign has also included revamped interiors.
We got all new lighting, new seating, new tables and chairs.
Dark wood and busy walls out. in favor of lighter paint, clean lines, and farmhouse vibes. A move Cracker Barrel says is meant to feel lighter, brighter, and more welcoming. Its CEO outlining the changes last year.
Our goal is to take what people love about Cracker Barrel and open the aperture a little bit so that more people love Cracker Barrel. So we want to appeal to all generations.
But now
people, the old folks love Cracker Barrel. When I like I said, when I go back to the Midwest and the South, people love Cracker Barrel for that old country vibe. You know what I'm saying? And they're not loving this. They're not loving this. And it's important to pay attention that it's not always the seating and the lighting that's the issue. If you want to get new people, the first thing, in my personal opinion, the first thing I would do, like I said, my man who's revamping Red Lobster, the first thing he started to work on that menu. You got to work on that menu first, then you work on the seating and the lighting. You know what I'm saying? But let this keep going.
It's even sparking political backlash, some calling the redesign woke, drawing critics like the president's son. The company says only 30 of its 660 stores are getting...
They called the seat. How is the seating and the lighting woke? You know what? Here's the thing. At the end of 2025, one word that I wish would just disappear is the word woke. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember, like, everything starts in the black community. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know when the word became popular, but I remember years ago, the term was like, yo, stay woke. And it was all about staying aware of what's going on when it comes to black issues and all that. But anyway, woke has been hijacked for everything now. And now lighting and seating is woke. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, this world is wild, man.
The full makeover, and despite the new branding, the iconic rocking chairs and gift shops are here to stay. Saying in a statement to the AP, our values haven't changed, and Uncle Herschel remains front and center in our restaurants and on our menu. With all restaurant chains hoping to attract younger customers in a difficult economy, Cracker Barrel stirring the pot.
I go into Cracker Barrel to go from 2025 to 1914. I ain't never asked for this.
Hey, thanks for...
Anyway, look, it's very simple for Cracker Barrel. I think that obviously keep Uncle Herschel on there. It's important to people. Don't change the logos yet. Don't start doing that. Because again, I don't know if they change anything in the menu, but when I'm looking at this report, they're not talking about an upgrade on those they have home fries, but their home fries are kind of like cheesy, and they're pretty good. I'm not mad at the home fries. I think that the pancakes are subpar. The French toast, subpar. The eggs, extremely subpar. And the I think turkey sausage, subpar. And again, all you Cracker Barrel lovers, cool. Tell me if I'm wrong, but Cracker Barrel's food is subpar. If you ever been to a really good pancake house, and again, my standards may be high. We go to a really good pancake house in New Jersey called the Original Pancake House. So again, Cracker Barrel's food is subpar. But I think that, look, if people have been going there for a long time, they go there for that particular flavor and that particular vibe. So I think, again, the CEO, if they want to bring new people in, younger people in particular, who don't have some ties to Cracker Barrel, millennials and Gen Zs and all that, you got to upgrade the food. The food has to be different. And I think that they should kind of work on the new menu. And that would be, to me, you upgrade the menu and then you try to get people in to sample the new menu. Again, going back to my man with Red Lobster, he's worked on the menu with Red Lobster. He did seafood boils and just new entrees. That's the way you kind of revamp. And then from there, you could slowly switch up lighting and seating and all that stuff. And maybe you mess with the logo. That's after you get people in. That way, if people dub you and they're like, listen, I don't like that logo, I don't like the look, I'm not going, then you already have the revamped food and you can easily change the logo back. I mean, IHOP, I think it was a publicity stunt years ago when they did the IHOP, IHOB, International House of Burgers. I think it was just a joke, but anyway, they quickly switched it back once they got the backlash or whatever. But Cracker Barrel is one of those places that, again, they need to work on making better food. I would start there. So Anyway, before I get into the main subject, I'm going to get into another story. Now, Target has lost a lot of money, 11 consecutive quarters of loss. Now, I'm going to play this. I'm going to give my perspective on what I think is wrong with Target. Target is a job. I used to work at Target a long time ago. I was like, I don't know, 17, 18, something like that. Right out of high school. I think I worked for Target for, I don't know, maybe a year. But Target was a different place, different time back then in the late 90s. But times are changing. And again, how people spend their money is changing.
In this morning's Money Watch, Target is changing CEOs. The retail giant has not been doing well lately. It's starting to feel the impact of President Trump's tariffs, and it's also getting backlash for reversing its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Jolene Kent looks at the change at the top and what it could mean for shoppers. Jolene, good morning.
Vlad, good morning. Target has been struggling for years. The stock has dropped more than 25% since January. That's why CEO Brian Cornell is stepping down. He'll be replaced next February by COO Michael Fidelki, a 20-year veteran at the company, tasked with turning things around.
The big shakeup at Target comes as customers are turning away. After 11 straight quarters of slowing sales, profits have dropped nearly 20% compared to last year, while other retailers like Home Depot and La-Z-Boy have missed sales expectations. Companies say President Trump's tariffs and the trade war have begun to drive up prices of certain goods.
What does the situation at Target tell you about the health of the American consumer?
Target's retail results show one thing: consumers are under stress. And when you're under stress, you try and make your dollar go a little further. Unfortunately, if you're looking for low prices, Target isn't your first destination.
Consumer confidence in the economy has dropped 5 out of the last 7 months. Despite that, Target ended its price matching program in July as it faces intense competition from Walmart, Amazon, and Costco.
Is Target a casualty of the tariff situation?
I think all retailers are suffering from tariffs and the impact on margins. Whether they're passing it on or not is still early to say.
And the company said customer backlash to its decision to roll back diversity, equity, and inclusion programs this year has also hurt sales.
The backlash to Target's DEI retreat was real, and it really impacted the retailer in Q1. Same-store sales were down 4%, and they lost over $12 billion of market cap.
Do you think Target can win them back?
Target can win them back. I think it has to return to some of its core basics.
Yikes. 12 million bucks. So the boycott, again, I talked about the boycott earlier this year in relation to the DEI situation with Target. I think that honestly, I wasn't big on the boycott. I don't think it really made a big difference, and the DEI program did not negatively really affect black people per se, but we were the main ones supposed to be boycotting Target. But I think bigger than that, I think Target has had an issue. I mean, 11 straight quarters. We're talking about nearly 3 years of downslide. And I think that Target's main problem is that they cost too damn much. That's really what it comes down to. The prices are high. And it's like, why would I go to Target? I mean, when I go to Target, I'm like, I don't even go to Target. But when I do go to Target, I don't know the last time what I bought from there, but everything's expensive. Why would I go to Target? It's almost like, if there's a Walmart in the vicinity, I'd rather go to Walmart. It's just the prices are just better. It just comes down to that. What am I paying for? Target was always, they remind me of like a CVS, CVS, Walgreens. Some of these places, it doesn't really make sense. And they're dying because the prices are too high, and there are things that you can really get on Amazon or Walmart. And I think it's going to be it's just part of the retail death and the retail shrinkage that's happening in the market. But Target in and of itself is a big store that doesn't really offer, to me, it doesn't offer any incentive to go. Why am I going to Target? I mean, the clothes are not great. If you remember, if you're not from Illinois, you may not know of Marshall Fields, but Marshall Fields was Marshall Fields is gone now, but Marshall Fields was like almost like you can compare it to like a Neumann's, not Neumann's, but Newman's. Is that Newman's or Newman's? Newman's or Neumann's? I don't know. No, my bad. Neiman Marcus. Neiman Marcus. That's what I'm talking about. Neumann is a whole nother thing. That's an audio thing. But Neiman Marcus, that's what I'm thinking about. So it's kind of like you could compare it to like a Neiman Marcus or Macy's, if you will, right? So Target is like, why are you really going there? And I think that Target should rebrand itself and work on lowering prices if they can. I don't know. They might just have to shrink a little bit. I think maybe there should be less Targets and maybe they can reduce prices by shrinking their footprint. But I don't see the reason to go to Target. I really do not. I don't see it. I mean, there was a time, like I said, I worked there years and years ago when I was getting out of high school. And there was a time where they had a great music section. The clothes was always trash to me. I don't know why anybody would buy clothes from Target, but dang, that's just me. But they had a great art. They had a great music section, electronic section. They also had a lot of automotive, and they had the home stuff, home supplies, houseware, if you will, like brooms and a lot of decorations and little stuff like that you buy for the house. Those things, and again, Target and Home Goods, that's what long before Home Goods came along, Target was selling that stuff. So Target, Home Goods, that type of stuff, people would go to Target for that stuff too. But it's like now, again, you can get a lot of stuff online, and why are you going to pay more at Target? It just doesn't make sense. So anyway, I think that Target needs to shrink its footprint. I don't think bringing back DEI is going to save Target by any means. I don't think that DEI, I think that, again, people decided to boycott Target. Target's just one company of many who decided to cancel its DEI initiative. But again, DEI, I don't even want to get into it, but the people who's supposed to benefit from it, quote unquote, and the people who's supposed to be boycotting from it, I didn't see any decrease in black employment at Target or an increase during DEI. If y'all know better, tell me wrong. But I think all of that is just mumbo jumbo for the fact that Target just is becoming obsolete in the retail space, and that's just part of it. And again, I think CVS, what's the other one? Rite Aid. These places are marked up high, and I think that they're going to have a hard time in between the dollar stores and the Walmarts and the Costco's and Amazon. It's only a matter of time for a lot of those places. So their days are numbered. So it is what it is. But good luck to Target. We'll see what's up. But the new CEO is supposed to be meeting with Pastor Jamal Bryant. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. So let me get into another piece. So I coming off of the Amanda Seales debate that she had with the black conservatives, I had a few conversations, and I had a conversation with one of my friends, and we were just talking about, the greater black community and some of the things I'm seeing. I think that this is what's interesting. I think right now there's a little bit of a divide that's going on, and maybe not in real life. I wouldn't say in real life, in my everyday life, but online, in the internet stratosphere, there is a lot of conversations about, FBA, Foundational Black Americans, or ADOS, against immigrants, African immigrants, black immigrants, Caribbean immigrants. And I think it's a interesting thing and also a dangerous thing to have a lot of separation. And I think that, when you go into the conversation about reparations. So let me start there with reparations. First of all, I'm first generation. My parents are from Ghana and I was born here. My experience of growing up, I grew up in greater Illinois, Chicago area, and, pretty much had a, what you would call an African American life, if you will. I mean, I hadn't been back to Ghana until I grew up, and I lived, the life of a black American person, my experience. Now, my name, obviously, when people hear my name, obviously, then, they don't know if I was born here, or they don't know if I, just came over here. But I think that, my experience in growing up, and I grew up mostly around black people for the most part, black American people. Illinois I didn't meet a lot of people from the Caribbean per se until I moved to the East Coast. But in the Midwest, it was kind of like most of the black people I knew were, what you would call foundational black Americans. And I think that I just want to talk a little bit about where the greater black society is now. And before I even get into that, so foundational black Americans. So Tariq Nasheed, I don't know if he coined the phrase, but he does explain it on an interview with Vlad. And I want to just play a piece of that. I think most people are aware, if you're in tune with the conversation, because you have a lot of different schools of thoughts amongst the greater black people in the country. You have foundational black Americans, you have ADOS, and ADOS is just, another term. It's basically the same thing as foundational black Americans. It's American descendants of slavery, right? And then you have people who believe in Pan-Africanism, that we're all one blood. Let me play a little bit of Tariq Nasheed, and then I'm going to get into kind of what I wanted to talk about real quick. So let me play this. So he just simply explains what FBA is. And just to be clear, I think his description of FBA is needed, and he explains why it's needed, because in some ways I do understand how people can feel like, don't just call everybody black. It's important for everybody to be able to, have their tie to what particular culture and particular lineage group they come from. I'm cool with that. But let me play this real quick.
And that's the thing. What makes a foundational black American is that we don't have immigrant lineage. That's the thing. That's what makes you a foundation. It's not a group. It's not an organization. It's not something that you join. It's acknowledging the people who are literally the foundation of this nation. Me, on both sides of my family, I have no immigrants in my family. My mother and father, both lineages come from the South. Okay. From the beginning of this country, I can trace my lineage to the mid 1700s on paper, and it goes deeper than that. So that's what we talk about when we mean foundational black American. We're just acknowledging our lineage and the importance and significance of it in this country, because we are a very unique ethnic group. That doesn't mean that we're better or worse than anybody. We are a unique ethnic group with a very unique history here. And we want people to give that the same respect that we give other people. There's the thing, Vlad, where people want to make us generic Africans. The term African American is a misnomer. That was a term that got popularized in 1988 by Jesse Jackson, the Congressional Black Caucus, and the Democrats. No, we as a group, we never called ourselves African American. I think the term African American was in a book in the 1700s by a black preacher. I forgot what the guy's name, but that was the only time we would see that term during slavery. That was a term that we generally didn't use. Really, it didn't get popular until the late 80s. And the term was given to us, and that term was given to us to make us comparable to immigrants. It was to say that we're just like an Italian American. We're just like a Mexican American. So that was to basically almost sanitize our unique history here. And that worked against us. The term African American is a misnomer. Elon Musk is an African American.
Right. South African American.
Yeah, but African American still.
Correct.
There's a lot of people from places like the Sudan and other places who are African Americans. And, they'll have a lot of vitriol towards us here. So the term African American is a misnomer. So we wanted a term that was more indicative of who we were and who we are. And that's where foundational black American comes from.
So that's why you're differentiating from people who came over maybe 1 or 2 generations ago?
Right. So that's the thing. There's 2 things that happened. There was people brought over from Africa, but in smaller numbers, very small numbers here. Most of the people brought over from Africa didn't come to North America. Most of them were taken down to Brazil, taken to the Caribbean. I think it was less than 6% of the people brought from Africa who made it over here to North America. Those people who were brought over here from Africa, they were mixed in with the indigenous and black indigenous tribes here, where there were a lot of black people who were already here. Several archaeologists and historians and other people, they proved this.
Here's the thing. Like, for me personally, I've always understood, generally, when I was growing up, I understood that, all black people are essentially, and all people, if you go by science, are tied back to the continent of Africa. However, I do think it's important for black people who are descendants of slaves in America to be able to define themselves uniquely, right? And I think that the conversation about reparations, and again, I'm tying this back to the whole viral conversation between Amanda Seals and the conservatives that happened last week. I think that the conversation for reparations is important. I'm pro reparations. I think that it's difficult to figure out who's going to get it. But, you know, as somebody who is first generation, I certainly wouldn't be trying to claim reparations, right? I certainly wouldn't. My wife is full foundational black FBA. She certainly could claim it, right? And the other interesting thing is like who would get it? Where would the age range stop, right? And, you know, I was asking a friend of mine who we were talking about this, and he was saying how a lot of conservatives are in the way or impeding the progress for reparations. And I was saying, well, I don't think that conservatives, quote unquote, are impeding it. I think it's more the fact that the logistics of reparations for black people in this country, it has been so, or at least the description of the logistics seems so not chaotic, but it just seems like people haven't figured out how it would be done. So where does the cutoff go, right? And does it include people who are mixed? Now, I'm first generation, but my wife is not. Our kids, would they get it? Like where does the age cut off? So I think all these things should be figured out. And personally, the reason why I'm talking about this is I think the reparation conversation is a good conversation, but I think that we've kind of gotten into, I was seeing online a couple of weeks ago how there was this big boycott about, you know, FBA or boycotting African braid shops and African braiding shops, or Africans are coming out saying this about black Americans. I think all of that's crazy work. You know why? Because, you know, I think for the greater black community in America, the things that people want, the things that people feel like, you know, how people want to move ahead and kind of figure out, okay, how do we close the wealth gap? How do we have better neighborhoods? How do we decrease some of the problems that are inflicted upon us? I think that the separation makes it even crazier. It makes it even more dynamic in a bad way. So I think that with the reparations conversation, I think that someone, and there's a lot of pro reparations groups, right? The Democratic Party is not for reparations. The Republicans are not either. But I think that the parameters for who gets it, who does not get it, what would it look like, I think need to be pushed forward and to be brought to the government. Otherwise, I think that here's the thing, and this is the thing, and when we get into this conversation, some people are going to get mad when I say this, but what happens if it never happens? What happens if reparations never happens? So I think what's happening now, there's a divide between black people in this country. There's a divide between people who are saying, hold up, we got a lot of things that need to be repaired and the government still owes, and they need to take care of that because of the ills that are going on in our communities and the disparities between black and white people, quote unquote, right? And then you have another group who are like, you know what? I ain't really dwelling on reparations. We need to figure out things that we can do for ourselves, right? What are some things that we can do ourselves? And what are some problems that we have in our communities, right? So it's an interesting thing. So the reparations part, I'll just say this. I'll leave reparations alone by just saying, look, I think I'm pro reparations. I don't have a dog in the fight for reparations. It wouldn't come to me because, again, I can't tie my lineage to slavery in America. So it wouldn't matter one way or another for me, but I do think there's surely a case for repair for people who are descendants of slaves. And I think that, you know, when people are debating this topic, I think it's not so much about whether, because look, at the end of the day, it's not about debating reparations. It's really more about how would it be distributed if it were to happen. I think that's where the conversation should be right now, because you're going to have people. I've talked to foundational black American people who don't want reparations. You know, most people do, from what I understand. But I've talked to black people who don't care. They're like, I don't believe it's going to happen, and so on. So It doesn't mean that you should just forget about it, but I think that what happens if it doesn't happen, right? And where are black people in the future? I think that there's a group of people, and I'm looking a lot of times at younger people. When I looked at that panel with Amanda Seals, I think a lot of the people up there, I wouldn't consider them conservative. I would just consider them people who got up there who wanted to debate Amanda Seals. And I don't think either way, I don't think the things that Amanda Seals said was wrong. I think that the question is, where are we going now? So I bring that back to black people in general. All the separation that's going on in this conversation going on right now is puzzling, right? Because when I'm looking at my kids, and what happens in time, as time goes on, the first generation thing, and whether your lineage is tied back to so and so on, as time goes on, it gets more dynamic and more dynamic and more dynamic, because people from the Caribbean marry people who are foundational Black Americans. People from Africa marry people who are Black American. All of my siblings, all married and had children with African American. It's not something that we focus on so much, because what happens is that once you grow up here, no matter where you're coming from, and again, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be differentiate groups of black people. There's nothing wrong with that. Jamaicans are Jamaicans, Haitians are Haitians, Cubans are Cubans, Ghanaians are Ghanaians. I mean, I'm all cool with that. And African Americans, or look, if we do FBA, whatever it is, I think it makes perfect sense as far as the name. But the question is, are we going to separate ourselves as far as forward movement? And that's the part where I think is getting weird right now. So let me get back to the point. So, all right. So let's think about this. When you look at the problems that we talk about for the black community, now it's becoming where we can't even talk about the problems, because people will refute it and come back and say, hey, there ain't no problems. That we don't have no crime issue. We don't have any family structure issue. We don't have education issues. And if we do, it's because there aren't enough resources. And I agree with that to a point. But I also think we have to agree on the actual problems that we have, and one of the things that I think is going on now, let's talk about the crime for a minute. And when you go through the statistics, just to so people don't get all mad, the vast majority of black people are not committing crimes. The vast majority of black men are not in jail. The vast majority of black women are not committing crimes and not on the street doing something crazy. It's not about that. But the question is, again, do we have violence issues in our communities? Black and brown communities, are there violence issues? I would tend to say yeah, based on my personal experience, right? I would tend to say yeah, based on what I see, just for crime in and of itself. We're talking about how crime is down everywhere. And I talked about this last episode. The conversation now is that crime is down everywhere. So we almost can't talk about crime anymore. And it's crazy because, Trump right now is going to, and I said this last show, that, DC was first as far as the National Guard. And he talked about possibly going to other cities. I didn't really think he was going to do it, but apparently it looks like he's going to. It looks like Chicago looks like it's next. But I'm telling you, and New York as well, right? But I'm telling you, I feel like the crimes now, our youth has changed, and the crimes are far more brazen than they used to be. The kids seem to have far less remorse. And I think there's a degeneration of our youth. Before I even get into the New York story. So my wife and I, we were talking about this the other day. And here's the thing. For me, is there a black community? Is there black communities? Are people vested in black communities? What is a black community, right? And I think that for me, like when we decided to move and buy a house, and we decided to, we have younger kids under 10, and we're like, okay, well, where do we want to move? What do we want our kids to see? And I was big on the fact that I wanted my kids to live in an area that was majority black. I purposely wanted that, or at minimum mixed, half and half, and it's not because I don't care about color per se, but I think that it's important. I mean, let's be honest with each other, right? Let's be honest. Not many groups of people say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move into an area where I'm the only person of my color or culture. There's not many people that do that. Most of the time it seems like, and again, other people do it, but a lot of times it be us, where we'll say, you know what, we'll move somewhere where we're the only one. And I think that that's not healthy. I think that, for me, and again, it's no disrespect, you know what I'm saying? But for me personally, I wanted my kids to be around other black children. I think it's important. I think that there are things culturally that whether you're, and again, I'm going back to the differences between black people because we're all separating now based on many things. I think there's things culturally that we all share. I'm a black African kid, quote unquote, who grew up here, born here, and I grew up in my childhood years amongst African American people, and we shared many things culturally, because we were sharing the same experience, and culture is about where your culture, a lot of culture is about where you're at now. I'm not saying that it's not about where you were, but culture for children is where you grow up. If you take a white kid right now and you stick him in the middle of Africa, any country, if he's surrounded by that culture, he's going to grow up in that culture. That's what he's going to know. Now, his skin might be different. He might look different. He might have a different name, but his culture, a lot of his culture is going to be that, unless someone is, surrounding him, enforcing whatever culture he came from every day. But where you grow up, that becomes your culture. Who you're around, that becomes your culture. And I think that, my point is just that all these divisions of black people is concerning. So my thing is, like I said, we purposely moved to an area that was mostly black on purpose because I wanted my kids to have the experience to be around black people. You know what I'm saying? It's just that simple. So there's nothing revolutionary about that. It's normal. Most people do it. Most Italians, most Irish, most Jewish people, most Asian people, most Indian people, they find their neighborhoods and they move into them. So it's normal for black people to do that. But what's happening now is that we're having these conversations, and when it comes to the black community, again, I was telling my friend this the other day, and again, people may hate me for saying this, but there's a lot of black people who don't want to live around black people, who purposely don't live around black people. And look, nobody wants to be around crime. Nobody wants to be around violence. Nobody wants to be unsafe. But those things are not necessarily synonymous with black people. Poverty is not necessarily synonymous with black people, right? Because there's a lot of people who are talking this stuff about, they're for the culture and this and this and that. But then when you go and look at their actual lives, you're like, man, you don't even live around no black people. What are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? So I've gotten to a point where I'm like, anyway, I'm going to go into this story, but it's just, my thing is that it's hard for me to listen to people talk about, black this, black that, and they don't live around black people. Or same thing about people talking about relationships and talking about what people need to do as far as family and stuff like that. And they don't, they're not in a relationship themselves. They're not married themselves. The Dr. Umars, the Cheyenne Bryants, having these conversations about black people and black men and black women, what they need to do. And it's like, you ain't even done it. So it's like, what are you talking about? But anyway, getting back into, I think there's crime issues in our communities. and there's violence issues in our communities. And if you haven't been around it, you've never seen it. Coming from Illinois, I know it's true. Coming from Illinois and Chicago, I know it's true. But it's cool. People can deny it. So let's go into the story from the Bronx real quick. This girl is only 17 years old.
We begin with a rash of gun violence in the Bronx last night and the pain it left behind for many families.
A basketball game in Baychester ended in bloodshed when several shooters opened fire. Bullets hit 5 people, killing 1 man. A 17-year-old girl, Anthony Campbell, remains in critical condition right now.
Eyewitness News reporter Lucy Yang joins us from Baychester with the very latest. Lucy?
Well, Joe and Tanya, it was a picture-perfect day to go to the park today, except Haffen Park behind me is still an active crime scene. This after 5 people were shot at a basketball tournament. 1 man lost his life. 1 young girl is fighting for hers. We spoke with the family today.
It's heartbreaking. You don't give birth to your children and not to see them set up to a life support unit.
Jennifer Talbot says her 17-year-old daughter, her youngest, dreamed of becoming a speech pathologist to help others express themselves. Tonight, Anthony Campbell cannot even utter a sound after being shot in the back of the head. The bullet lodged behind her eye.
And she must have got up and was trying to run. My grandson was there and he ran up, thought that she was dead and ran. And they called my daughter. My other daughter went down there and panicked, and somebody else started to do CPR.
It was 7:30 Saturday night here in the Baychester section of the Bronx. There was a basketball tournament at Haffen Park. Crowds flocked to watch, then ran for dear life when bullets replaced basketballs.
My niece just turned 17. She didn't deserve this. Nobody could deserve this.
We're told Anthony Campbell was the youngest of 5 victims in the shooting rampage. A 32-year-old man was killed after being struck in the chest. 2 others shot in the back are expected to survive, as well as a 42-year-old man hit in the arm. As late summer gun violence continues to wreak havoc in the city, this mother was dragged through emotional whiplash on Saturday. Jennifer had just graduated from her PhD program in Connecticut. When she got the call, her daughter was in ICU.
17 years old, had a lot of things, had her life way ahead of her, had plans to do a lot of things in her life, and yeah, got a bullet in her head. And there's violence in our communities that I think that that have been going on for a long time, and I think that that's the conversation that I feel like it's not even broached anymore. I feel like it's not something we can talk about because we got people telling everybody that crime is down, crime is down, crime is down. But when you go through and you kind of look at some of the major cities, it's like, I don't know if crime is actually down or they're just not reporting everything. I think there's more crime than what is being reported. Let me just put it simple as that, and I think that it's our neighborhoods, black neighborhoods. I think there's more crime than what they're tallying down. It's worrisome to me because it's like they're telling everybody crime is down, but then you look at our neighborhoods and it's like, it doesn't seem that way. I don't get that impression. The crimes are more brazen. Even in Chicago, I mean, it's gotten to a point where it's just stuff you didn't see yesterday. What I mean by yesterday is years before. It's just gotten to a point where these kids don't even care. It's not even like they're sneaking and there's armed robbery and it's on the low. This is like brazen, right in your face type of stuff. Let me play this piece from Chicago real quick.
Locker store remains closed and it's unclear when it will reopen. It's the 3rd Foot Locker that crash and grab thieves have targeted in the city in the last week. It's happened again.
Get a smash and grab at Foot Locker.
This afternoon, a steady stream of Foot Locker customers are left stunned after finding out the store is closed following an early morning crash and grab by thieves.
I'm shocked and I'm disappointed at the same time because this neighborhood used to be a very good neighborhood.
It happened around 6 o'clock Sunday morning at the store in the Lake Meadow Shopping Center, located near 35th and King Drive in Chicago's Bronzeville neighborhood on the city's south side. Criminals targeted the same store around the same time last year.
They won't be able to stay in business because they keep losing money because of the situation. And if they keep losing money, that means they're going to leave. And then we're going to lose the stuff that we need in our neighborhoods.
Detectives say someone drove a Jeep SUV through the business's front door. That's when a band of thieves got out of the vehicle and ran into the store and started stealing merchandise, specifically tracksuits and Nike Air Jordans. The burglars then jumped back in the Jeep and drove away. Other businesses in the area are frustrated and concerned that they'll be next.
The whole neighborhood is just sick of people coming into the neighborhood and acting like they can just come ravage your stores, take what they want to take, and then they try to make you feel like you're wrong for defending your property.
The most recent crime spree comes as crash and grab thieves hit two other Foot Locker stores in Chicago, one in the West Englewood neighborhood and the other in Humboldt Park. Chicago police have not said if the break-ins are connected. This is people who live and work in this neighborhood fear they'll lose more than just their sense of security if the thefts continue.
I think overall is really negative. We only have few places that we can shop in some of our neighborhoods. A lot of our malls and strip malls have gone down and they have not replaced them. And so I think we're taken away from our own.
There's a lot of people who don't want to have that conversation anymore. They don't want to talk. They're acting like this stuff is not happening in our neighborhoods. They're acting like these smash and grabs are not happening in our neighborhoods. And it's not a disrespect to our people. It's like, yo, we got to say to ourselves, and again, I don't even know who our people is anymore, because, it's like people are like, yo, everybody's trying to break into their own groups based on what country they come from. And it's like, that's the question of this whole podcast here is like, what is the black community? Who can speak on the black community? Is there any uniform set of culture that can overarch our cultures from wherever we come from that we could talk about, that we could say, you know what are some overarching things that we could do as a group of people who are melanated to say, like, listen, we want to improve our communities. Again, I'm speaking because I moved to a black community. Well, it's not revolutionary, like I said, but I live in a black community because my wife and I wanted to live in a black community, you know what I'm saying? And majority black community. And I want to be in a place that I love, I'm proud of, and we are, you know what I'm saying? And I think that the crimes that are happening in our communities are something that we can't ignore. So it's troubling to me, like everybody's mad now because Trump is going to not only DC, but Chicago and the National Guard. Now, I don't know if that's the answer, like I said last show, but there's definitely something going on in our communities, and when I talked to my buddy the other day, we were talking about this, and I'm like, there's people who don't admit that they leave the black community for those reasons. They leave the black community because they feel like, okay, I'm gonna go over here, it's gonna be quieter, it's gonna be more peaceful. And that's the thing. It's a little scary. So I'm okay with having these conversations because, now when we talk about crime, when we talk about education, and we talk about anything that has anything about do for self, that's now considered conservative for whatever reason. I don't even know. The only part of me, conservative has become like the new insult. If you're black and you are not subscribing to what may be left or liberal, you're conservative. And the only part of me that's conservative, as I said last show, is about government. I think government should be smaller. I definitely believe that, based on the things I've seen over the last, 4 to 5 years. I think government needs to shrink, not just federal, but even local government needs to shrink. That's my opinion. But as far as the greater black community, no, it's not about the parties. I think that it's okay for us to acknowledge things that are going on, and the conversation about doing for self, the conversation about changing some things culturally that are going on with our youth in our neighborhoods is okay to talk about. And it's become something where it's like, that's why I think the whole separation between, FBA, immigrants, it's gotten wild. It's gotten really wild. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how we got here. I feel like we all got here because Donald Trump got into office, and then the conversation started to really become all these things. Because I think that, there's this undercurrent of liberal versus conservative thing that's going on. And I think in the black community, it just doesn't make sense, because we have to confront the things that are actually going on in our community. It doesn't mean that everybody's committing crime, but our neighborhoods are riddled with crime. Our neighborhoods are riddled. Some of our neighborhoods are riddled with properties that are not taken care of. Our neighborhoods are riddled with bad schools, in some areas. So my thought is that where do we go moving forward, right? Where do we go moving forward? And I think that what I love to see going forward is more of a conversation about solutions, right? But again, the question is, who is part of the black community? Like, for instance, everybody's going hard on Dr. Umar right now, which they should. Dr. Umar wanted to build this school. Obviously that school is not going to open. If you've been following Dr. Umar, look, I hope he opens the school, but I don't think it's going to ever open. And I'm not going to go into Dr. Umar because I'm very disappointed in that guy, even though I didn't contribute to the school. But the premise of what he was trying to do to open a school for black boys and black girls in Wilmington, Delaware, great, right? But again, it's one thing to talk about, it's another thing to do it, right? But the premise of having a strong black community, the only person that I've really seen that's, to me, has had a good step-by-step idea was Claude Anderson. Powernomics, and I told a buddy of mine about Powernomics, and I urged him to read the book. I think Claude Anderson had a very good step-by-step idea and an outline for black community, right? Because it talked about things that are not existent in the black community. Schools, banks, hospitals, right? Institutions that are needed. And Claude Anderson talked about something called, what he said in his Powernomics was something called inappropriate behavior. And that was something about, the behavior of things that are going on in our community. Things that, like I said, things that can't be talked about anymore. Because if we talk about anything that's inappropriate behavior, now it's like we're going at everybody who's black. And it's like, no, that's not what it is. It's not healthy, though, to not talk about things that are happening internally. So I think Claude Anderson had a great idea as far as concentrated wealth and concentrated political power. And I think that I told a buddy of mine, I think that the things that are missing, I think, in our community are the concentration of wealth, the concentration of political power. That's going to be something that, we'll have to figure out, because I think, the political part of it is, honestly, I think the political part of the conversation in the black community is mostly concentrated on the federal politics. So it's like Trump versus whoever you want to vote for, or next election, it might be Vance versus whoever the Democrats have in. But a lot of that doesn't really have anything to do, in my opinion, so deeply with black people. I think that a lot of it is local, and a lot of our experiences are really levied by local policies, so the political part of it's another thing. But as far as, the concentrated power, and again, we're going to have to deal with the part of what Claude Anderson described as inappropriate behavior. We have to deal with culturally some of the things that are going on. We got to embrace, and again, I'm talking about the greater black people. You can separate yourself and say, well, I'm from this country, or I'm from this lineage, and that ain't got nothing to do with me. That's cool. Like I said, I'm talking about these things for my kids. So we got to really deal with the behavior. We got to deal with what's going on in our communities. The violence is a thing. The idea that there's not violence in our communities is crazy for people not to deal with that. Again, and we have to deal with the internal beef that we have, the internal problems, the internal distrust that's going on in our communities. And I'm excited for new ideas, and I think that's what's really needed. But we can't have new ideas if we are, one, stuck in the past. We cannot have new ideas if we are not acknowledging true obstacles that are going on. And we can't have new ideas if they're not based around things that can be done for self, right? Because again, like I said, some people want to do for self, some people want to get away from the actual community. So we're in an interesting time, and people think that we're going through this whole, on the surface it seems like, yeah, we're going through this Donald Trump thing, and people are like, yo, this is what, I feel like a lot of the greater Black society in America has been taught to kind of focus on, but there's a lot of things going on underneath that. And I think that the future of, is there a Black community? Can there be a Black community? And if there are to be a Black community, I personally think a lot of the things that for a Black community we need, I think some conservative values are probably better for a Black community than not. But that's just my opinion, you know what I'm saying? And you could take that how you want to take it, but I think that family structure, concentrated economics, dealing with some of the behavior in our children has to be dealt with. We can pretend like it's not there and talk about, well, crime is down, but no, I don't think so. Or let me say this. I think either we want Black communities or we do not. Some people don't care one way or another, because what does it take to have a community? That's the real question. What does it really take? Can you have a community if you don't have strong family structures? Can you have a community if you don't have concentrated money, concentrated economics, right? These are things Claude Anderson talked about. Can you have a community if you don't have a behavior or a cultural system that deals with behavior? These are things that we have to deal with one way or another. Waiting on the government or waiting on anything to be repaired, as far reparations is reparations, but reparations is not an actual answer to me for the ills that are going on in greater Black society. And that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Again, if you haven't hit the subscribe button, hit that. It's the Crucial Convo podcast. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys in a minute. I'm out of here.